Shalom from Jerusalem. This is TV7 Israel's daily update. And today we will focus on the latest developments with a flood of senior dignitaries, of course, of the Trump administration visiting here in Israel to apply pressure, on the one hand, to assess and evaluate the way forward, while President Trump's senior advisors, both Jared Kushner and senior envoy Steve Witkoff, traveling to Gulf states to reassure and express President Trump's urgency in realizing this 20 or 21 point plan, actually. But before all that, let's introduce our experts for today and then dive immediately into today's topics. Mr. Amir Oren, of course, our TV7 Israel editor-at-large. Next to him, Brigadier General in Reserve Yossi Kuperwasser, formerly the Director General of the Israeli Ministry of Strategic Affairs and the head of the IDF Intelligence Directorate's Research and Assessment Unit, currently the President of the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security. And last but not least, Major General in Reserve Gershon Cohen, formerly the commander of the defense colleges in Israel, as well as an Army Corps commander. It's great to see all three of you. And Mr. Oren, let's start with a side note. Two preliminary hearings or votes passed on the Knesset plenum to push a first in 4 rounds, of course. It's very preliminary. To assert Israeli sovereignty over the entirety of Judea and Samaria. That is 1. And 2, specifically on the city of Ma'ale Adumim. What can you tell us about that? Of course, the American reaction was a little mellow, if I may call it that way, in light of President Trump's assurance to Arab countries and Islamic countries roughly a month ago that this would not happen.
Well, you say it's mellow, but what part of no isn't any Israeli leader supposed not to understand? And this is the nexus of national security, foreign policy, and domestic politics. Now, obviously, there are elements in Prime Minister Netanyahu's coalition who have been pushing for many years. This is their platform, their agenda for annexing the entirety of the West Bank, or at least the Jordan Valley and certain cities or towns in the region. And of course, this would run counter, first of all, to UN Security Council resolutions 242, 338, and perhaps international law. But more importantly than that, President Trump is dead set against it because he has promised his other partners and allies in the region that it will not happen. It's his word, as he put it, and he doesn't want to get on the bad side of Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, Qatar, and the rest. So Prime Minister Netanyahu has to walk a very fine line between his coalition partners and the U.S., especially as the U.S. Now has the major part in trying to reinforce the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas in Gaza, to disarm Hamas, to start to rehabilitate the strip. It has a new headquarters, or at least an office building, in the southern part of Israel, in the town of Kiryat Gat, out of which to coordinate all activities between the various nations and forces. So this is a very delicate time.
Thank you, Mr. Oren. Of course, matters of assertion of sovereignty have been made public, at least the intentions to do so prior to the European countries, as well as Australia and Canada, coming out at behest of French President Emmanuel Macron to basically proclaim, acknowledge, or recognize, rather, a Palestinian state, irrespective of reality on the ground. and that was ultimately pushed back on by President Donald Trump, as well as Arab countries, particularly Israel's leading ally, partner in the region as part of the Abraham Accords, namely the United Arab Emirates, which said that there would be devastating consequences from its part in the event that such a move would take place. But nonetheless, General Hakohen, the parliament is separate from the government, as the legislative does not, or the parliament does not necessarily have to follow on the foreign policy of the government itself. Is this statement a indication of a broader Israeli sentiment, or do you think that this was merely a move to try and send a signal to the Americans that indeed Judea and Samaria should be part of the state of Israel in any future arrangement, including specifically the major Israeli blocs within those territories?
It was all of them together, and we must pay attention to the fact that a Knesset member from opposition, like Lieberman, brought this idea of voting about that. It means that it was in a way a statement to bring a declaration that we are insisting that this is part of the Israeli national interest. Beyond that, it is very important to realize that among the settlers, they are not united about the necessity to declare annexation right now and sovereignty, because what is really important, according to the tradition of Mapai and Ben Gurion, is what really is taking place in the region by building, by creating new possession in the open space. And they are also aware that if we will succeed to bring sovereignty, it will be really hard to create a movement and momentum of building, because it will just be subordinated to the Israeli law, and all the constraints to build in the Galilee and the Negev will be settled upon Judea and Samaria. So the sovereignty in itself is a declaration with intentions and essential approach to say something about the connection of the Jewish people to this land, but actually, formally, it is not the real necessary step now.
Indeed. Well, as someone told me earlier last night, it doesn't matter what recognition is made around the world. The fact of the matter is there is no Palestinian state on the ground, and the same goes for Israeli sovereignty in those territories, irrespective of Israeli law, effectively, as you mentioned, General Cohen, constraining the Zionistic movement of building in their ancestral homeland due to all kind of regulatory constraints. This ultimately, we can see a certain reality on the ground emerge in which we do see those territories, in effect, being part of Israel de facto. But General Kupelwasser, when we're hearing what we're hearing coming out of the Emirates and the Saudis as well, in particular, Israel does need to take them into consideration from a broader perspective, not only in the Western perspective, but also in the perspective of what Israel wants to achieve here in the region.
Well, we have to take everything into consideration. I think that the move was motivated first and foremost by the fact that we are entering the election year in Israel. And every member of Knesset feels that this is the time to convince the base that he's making an effort to promote their goals and interests. And that's why some of the members of Knesset from the coalition decided to move in a way that challenges the policy of the coalition and made a mistake. And as Vice President Vance said, if this was a political stand, it was a stupid political stand. And because this raised the issue ahead of schedule and in a way that creates all kinds of unnecessary hurdles on the way to improving the relations with Saudi Arabia and other Arab states. I hope everybody will understand and come back to the senses when we move forward with this law, and it will remain at the level of preliminary vote and not more than that at this time. I think that, look, we had the Abraham Accords. The Abraham Accords were based on Israel was about to apply its law in some parts of the Judea and Samaria before the agreement with the UAE and Bahrain and Morocco. And we gave a promise to those countries, especially to the Emiratis, that we are not going to proceed with the application of the law for at least 4 years, which is more or less, I think we have already crossed the 4 years, but the situation has changed. We have to also think about our credibility. These are very sensitive issues. We have to remember that in the plan that was approved by President Trump and by the Israeli government to some extent, although there was no direct vote about the plan, but it was given support by the Prime Minister. There is an article that deals with this matter, Article 19, that says that if there are going to be reforms in the Palestinian Authority and so on and so forth, there is going to be a pathway to Palestinian self-determination, and that may take the form of statehood, which is the aspiration of the Palestinian, is assumed to be the aspiration of the Palestinians. Let's first see that the Palestinians make the reforms. They are not going to make any reform. And let's take advantage of this sentence in order to tell the Arab world, look, we have made a move towards accepting the right of the Palestinians to self-determination and even statehood. This is not going to materialize because of the Palestinians, because they're never going to have these reforms that are required from them. But this is good enough for you to move forward on the path towards normalization. That's what we need to do right now. And this is worth more than all kinds of declarations regarding Judea and Samaria, for many reasons, amongst them the reasons General Cohen mentioned here. But also because at the end of the day, as long as there is no Palestinian state, we enjoy a very favorable situation in the Judea and Samaria territories. We actually control the land. Nobody really disputes that. And we can build new or build in the settlements that we have over there. And many Israelis move to these areas. And this is good enough. Who cares about well, I mean, there is a reason to care, but at this point, who cares if this is going to be part of Israel from the aspects or not? We control the land anyhow.
Indeed. Well, Mr. Oren, let's focus for a moment on the peace plan, so to speak, of President Trump. There's a really concerted effort by senior officials. Now, of course, Marco Rubio just arrived in Israel after Vice President J.D. Vance left, and we're seeing this ongoing effort, a concerted effort to really apply the necessary pressure or all tools necessary, so to speak, in order to bring about a successful outcome. But looking on the field, and Secretary Rubio acknowledged that before boarding his plane ahead of his travel here, Hamas is positioning itself for the long run, to stay there, to assert its power, and doing so in a horrifying manner, as Secretary Rubio mentioned. What are we to take out of that, and how is Israel and the United States in joint efforts going to really tackle this issue without, hopefully, allowing this outline to collapse?
Just to add to the earlier discussion, should there be annexation, complete sovereignty, there will be millions of Palestinians, new Israelis, who could vote for the Knesset, because it wouldn't be an apartheid state, presumably. So Israel doesn't need such a minority, which in time could, Allah forbid, become a majority. But this is a moot question right now. Now, as for the Gaza situation, there is a very worrying vacuum, or perhaps some gap between what everyone missed, that is that Hamas would be out, perhaps crushed or in exile, and then there will be another force, both governmental and military, which will come in. But because the second step was not prepared and is still under discussion, we still don't know who will be the national contingents, how will it all be worked out under the American Coordination Center. Hamas has managed to use the time to get back on its feet, have some 20,000 men under arms. Perhaps they are not that well trained. These are not the Nukhba operatives which they had 2 years ago. But nevertheless, this is enough, as you said, or as you quoted Secretary Rubio, to control through terror everyone in Gaza. So half of Gaza, a bit more than half, is under Israeli control. But in the half that they still have, Hamas is in power, and time goes by without the day after solution still being in place.
General Cohen, looking at the situation there, I remain a little skeptical with regard to prospects of the 20 or 21-point plan succeeding. Can Israel maneuver itself into a position where Hamas does truly end up out of the governing and military capabilities that it still holds?
It's really hard to expect that Hamas will disappear as an equipped entity in Gaza Strip. They are really experts and doing how to make everything very calculated to create a kind of expression of goodwill. Maybe they will be in goodwill to give their heavy weapon like rockets, but they will stay with all the other light weapons. And anyhow, they are staying in the region, in the cities, in the streets, by expressing and the manifestation of power. Everyone that will enter will realize that he must respect the fact that they are with the power in the streets. It means that they are far away from going to disappear. And regarding the President Trump plans, they are so obsessed to accomplish all that 21 parts of the plan that they will try to contain all this deviation of the expectations of the Israelis. They will just declare that it is anyhow what could be achieved, nothing beyond that could be achieved, and we must accept that this is the best situation for us. And therefore, we will have to keep the anxiety to be suspected about everything that's going on, and we will have to be ready to everything.
General Kupelwasser?
Oh, look, the same was said about the readiness of Hamas to release all the living hostages and the rest of the hostages. So all kinds of surprises can happen. And the question is, what kind of pressure should be applied against Hamas in order to make them move on the issue of disarmament as well? And of course, first and foremost, it's a military pressure of Israel. And the military pressure that we can apply now is, in a sense, bigger than what we could have applied before, because there's going to be probably, I hope so, unless Gershon is right and the Americans are going to forget about the need to disarm Hamas. But right now, it doesn't seem so. And it's going to be a green light from the Americans to use force against Hamas by Israel. And this is going to be something different. And the green light can come also from other places, not only from the United States. Anyhow, the international understanding of this move is going to be greater because Hamas is going to be presented as the obstacle and moving towards the rest of the wonderful articles that comprise the deal, the plan. So that's one thing that's in our favor. Secondly, we don't have living hostages in the hands of Hamas anymore. So another problem that limited our ability to operate is removed, and we can use force in a more profound way. And third, there is the Palestinian pressure over Hamas. We have to remember the reason they do what they do now is in order to gain time and deal with their internal opposition. People feel that Hamas is both weaker and responsible for their suffering. And if they are going to insist on taking this responsibility without declaring it, but actually, in fact, everybody would understand that the reason why there's no reconstruction and the aid is not coming in the extent everybody expects is because Hamas stubbornly refuses to disarm, then the criticism of the population is going to grow. We have to remember that in recent days, the main issue in the Arab press is whether the 7th of October was a wise idea or not. Most of the Arab press think that, and even the Iranians, think that 7th of October was a mistake. And so does their other friends of Hamas. They think that this was a mistake because they paid dearly for that. And so did the Palestinian population in Gaza. And of course, Hamas itself. So it's they have a very hard job in convincing the people that they care about, their audiences, their base, that the 7th of October was a good idea and that they should support them staying in power in spite of the deal. And the compensation for being removed from power is a huge reconstruction effort by the international community and by the Arabs. Billions of dollars coming in, the situation is going to be improved considerably. And so this is another reason why Hamas is more prone to be convinced to disarm. Now, I believe that in spite of all of that, they are not going to be convinced to disarm. And we shall have to use force in order to disarm them. But we'll do that, as I said before, with greater support from the Americans. And we should not, the Americans believe that we can do that overnight, something like that. I don't think so. I think we need, first we need something like a month or so in order to work out together with the Americans the details of what's going to happen in the day after. Because there are all kinds of principles and guidelines, but they are not translated yet into details. And we want, one of the biggest achievements in this deal was that we don't need to govern Gaza ourselves. There's somebody who's going to take it away from us. If we carried out the attack on Hamas without internet, without the plan, we would have to own Gaza the day after the military operations come to an end. Here we have a plan that promises us that somebody else is going to take it. Wonderful. So let's work hard on the details of this day after. And then in the meanwhile, wait for the Hamas to give us more bodies. I'm sure that they're not going to give all of them, but more bodies can be brought back. And once this is finalized, then we can go and take military action against Hamas. It's going to last something like 2 months or so in my mind. But eventually we are going to wipe them off and remove them from power in Gaza. Right now they fight against the clans. This is not a real match for them.
Correct. That is obviously. Thank you, General Kupilwasser. That is indeed going still to be a topic that we're going to discuss thoroughly as we move forward in the days and weeks and even months ahead, since obviously the Islamist Hamas would lose all relevance if it would give up its weaponry, and that is something that it does not intend to do, be it in the Gaza Strip or in another sector that it might divert to. With that being said, we do see both Qatar and Turkey, but primarily Qatar, already starting to accuse Israel of violating the ceasefire somehow, placing themselves, of course, in a position to brace for the collapse of the ceasefire. And the more rhetoric we see coming out of Qatar and its various propaganda tools, to include, of course, Al Jazeera, which is its main propaganda tool, we may indeed see that it's leading in that direction. Now, Mr. Oren, last sentence.
A ceasefire without any political arrangement or at least some buffer forces between the combatants is fragile and is bound to collapse. And therefore, time is of the essence to move forward.
Indeed, and we're still praying to see all of the hostages who were murdered in Hamas captivity returned to Israel as speedily as possible. 13 of them are still in Hamas's hands. This is all the time that we have for today. I'd like to thank General Kupilwasser, General HaKohen, and Mr. Oren for all of your insights. I'd like to thank all of you at home as well. Until our next edition from here in Jerusalem. Shalom.
My name is Doron Gavish, and my background, 30 years of serving in the Israeli Air Force. My last job, I was the commander of the Israeli Air and Missile Defense during the introduction of the Iron Dome to the defense of Israel. All of this allows me really to be part of the team here in TV7. It is super important to have such a platform. We talk about the global situation, we talk about Israel and those different angles which are relevant to the discussion.